So, hi, I'm Jamie Hemmings. I'm the book editor for slamwrestling.net. And today we are speaking with professor, author, photographer of the recently released Friday Night at the Coliseum, Geoff Winningham. I'm just going to go old school and hold this up. Probably backwards. And we're also speaking with Toronto photographer Andrea Kellaway, who started photographing professional wrestling at the age of 18. So, and I think she has a birthday tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
I do have a birthday tomorrow.
So her 19th birthday tomorrow, everyone. She currently works for every big name promotion that has ever been to Canada. So we're talking Ring of Honor, WWE, Impact, as well as most of the indies in Toronto. And if you've looked closely, you've seen her photos on Slam as well. So I thought to start, I'd ask you, Geoff, so your book originally came out in 1971. How did this book project initially come about?
In 1970, 71, I was thinking of myself as sort of a news photographer around Houston, but without an editor. That is to say, I had no publication. I just wanted to be on the scene wherever there was a crowd gathered, an event happening. My hero was the great New York spot news photographer, Ouija. And I wanted to be Houston's Ouija. So if there was a big sporting event or a big party or a celebration or a parade or anything where people might be gathered, I wanted to be there and photograph it. I saw a notice in the Houston paper one Friday afternoon that there would be wrestling matches that night in the Houston Coliseum, and I decided that might be a good crowd to photograph. So I went with really no prior experience about wrestling. I mean, when I was 9 or 10 years old, when television first happened, and we got our first television set, wrestling was one of 3 programs I can remember being on. You know, there was Howdy Doody, and there was Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, and there was wrestling every Saturday night, as I recall. And I do remember watching those matches with my brother. I remember championship matches between Lou Thesz and Vern Gagne, but that's the extent of my memory, really. So when I went in that Friday night in February of 71, I really had little or no expectations at all of what I was going to see. I just thought there's going to be a crowd here. I like crowds. I had a sense probably that there'd be a lot of hooting and hollering and cheering and carrying on. And so I went, and indeed, there was lots of hooting and hollering and carrying on, and I was just taken away by it.
Okay, and I think Andrea's got a couple questions.
So Geoff, first of all, I just wanted to say I absolutely love the book. It's actually been like a sort of a career bucket list for me to put something together like this. And when I saw the book, I just fell in love with it. I love the imagery. I love the stuff with the fans. What gave you the idea to bring a tape recorder with you?
Well, first of all, thank you. That means a great deal to me, that someone who knows wrestling and has looked at it and photographed it as much as you likes the book. That means a great deal to me. I can see how someone might not like it, but I'm glad.
That?
Huh?
Sorry to interrupt you, but why would you say that?
Well, because it doesn't have to do so much with the big matches and who won or lost.
Oh, I see.
Which is what most people, when they get sports publications, want. You know, I did a book on high school football in Texas. And none of the football fans liked it because it didn't have any scores. It didn't have any list of champions. It was just very much like the wrestling, my personal observation of the phenomenon of a high school football game. So, you know, I can imagine how a big wrestling fan might not like the book, although in the case of Friday Night in the Coliseum, I think it'd be a little bit harder not to like it, because I hope that my not only my enthusiasm but for the wrestling, but my affection for the fans, my feeling of belonging there, my feeling of the inclusiveness of it, I think that comes through, and so hopefully that's part of what you like. But anyway, I really appreciate that you find it interesting. So what was the question now?
Okay. Well, I have one point to say before I move on past that, which was, so a couple years ago, I went to art galleries to show some of my work. And I went to the Elaine Fleck Gallery on Queen Street, which is a big street in Toronto here. Mm-hmm. And I showed her my work, and she said, "You have great work." And then asked me if she thought my show would be popular. And I said, "I'm not sure I understand what you mean." And she said, "Well, do you think your show will be successful?" And I was like, I don't know. I've never done this before. And she said,
"It's your job to figure that out."
She said, "Your show will be popular and it will be successful in the sense that people will come and they will look at it." She goes, "However, it won't be successful financially, which means I'm out." She goes, "These are," because I was showing a lot of the stuff I did at different independent shows. And she just said, because of there was no big names, she didn't want to go through. She's like, "If you took this style of photography and photographed backstage an Elton John concert," she's like, "you'd have a show. We do it." She's like, "It's not the photography, it's the subject." So I guess I kind of understand what you're saying there. It's not, well, I guess it wouldn't be the current wrestling fan that maybe would like this. It's somebody who's interested in wrestling's history.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate this, as well as I think photographers too, and artists.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, as someone that's had a lot of years of experience with galleries and gallery dealers, okay?
Yeah.
I wouldn't look to them to help you decide what kind of photographs you want to show or what you want to do with them, you know. We're all grateful for the galleries when they show our work and sell them, but, you know, at least you got an honest one, it sounds like, that said it won't sell. And the other thing I would tell you is that while Friday Night in the Coliseum was a great kind of launch vehicle for my career, it was the first major project I had done, and it just got terrific critical reception among about 20 people in the world. Those 20 people couldn't have been better people in terms of photography. So, but the book was a financial disaster.
Right.
And we almost never sold it out. And I was never able to sell prints until, at least 25 years after the book, when they began to seem a little retro. You know, once the wrestling had stopped happening in the Coliseum, then there was all sorts of floating nostalgia about it, even among people who could afford, you know, whatever the print cost. You know, it reminded them of something that they remember maybe just watching it on TV or actually being there. The one exception was in terms of print sales. This is so weird. The spring after the book came out in 1972,
yeah,
I had a letter from a guy in Basel, Switzerland. I remember his name, Dr. Henry Griesinger. And he asked me if I had photographs of, he said, "I have seen your book, which I admire. Do you have photographs of women catch?" And I thought, what? Catch. Catch in French is wrestler. Yeah. But I didn't get it at first. I thought, is this some other word for snatch? I mean, what is catch exactly? No. So anyway, I wrote him back and I said, this is all by mail, you know, long before the internet.
Right.
I wrote him back and I said, yes, there are not any in the first edition of the book, I don't believe, but there are in the second edition of the book. So anyway, I wrote Dr. Griesinger back and said, yes, I do have some. He wrote me back right away and said, please send me proofs of all you have of women catch and tell me your prices. And so I had like 5 contact sheets maybe. And I made extra contact sheets of those rolls of film and sent them to Dr. Griesinger with a note that I assumed would put him off forever. I said, the prints are $150 a piece. In 1972, you know, that was a chunk of money. I mean, the contact sheets came back like a week later, and he had circled like 20 pictures. Wow. And so those were the first print sales I had from the wrestling. 20 pictures went to Basel, Switzerland, and he said, and I wondered, how am I going to get paid? Anyway, he said, the easiest thing for me is to send you postal money orders, but they could not exceed $300. So I just, every other day in the mail, I'd get a money order from Switzerland for $300. And I'd go down to my post office to cash it. You know, thinking, man, this guy's got something really good going on between him and Switzerland. But those are the only prints that I sold in the first, 5, 6, 8 years. You know, it is a principle, I think, of art, including photography, that the really good work is harder to sell because it tends to be different in some way. And most buyers want something, whether they think so or not, they want something that they're familiar with. And I think what kept people from appreciating my photographs of wrestling in the beginning, at least the kind of audience that would be buying prints for $150, was that wrestling was considered by so many people as nothing but fake sport, you know? And
well, can I stop you for a second? So while you were shooting this, the fans believed everything, correct? Like the diehard fans that were coming. And there's a couple quotes from the book. There was one I really liked, which was, what did she say? She said something about she doesn't like that fake stuff, but she knows when they're bleeding, it's real.
Yeah, no, when the blood comes, it's real. Hey, yeah. I believe it's all real too. I believe it's all real. It's very, very real, okay?
Did you ever get hurt while shooting?
No.
Nobody kicked you or anything?
No, I barely got out of the ring a few times when a match would start more quickly than I thought it would. But no, I never had any risk there.
Andrea, have you ever gotten hurt while shooting?
That was my question.
I know the answer, but for the folks at home.
I actually did once. I don't know. I was squatting down and I was shooting up. They were right in the corner, and it was for Ring of Honor, and it was Paul London and Davey Richards. And Paul London went up, and Davey Richards grabbed his feet, and I thought he was going to come down and land on the apron, and he didn't. He came down and landed right on top of me, and I knew, like my foot, I knew I couldn't get up, and I didn't want to take the camera away from my face because I was embarrassed that this had happened. And so I kept shooting, and then all of a sudden I realized, what, nothing's happening, nobody's moving. And then I realized that Davey Richards was waiting for me to move out of the way so he can continue the match. Like I was in the middle, and this was like seconds that this all happened in my head, but yeah, I was mortified. And then I finally stood up and I realized that there was something wrong with my foot, and I did not tell anybody. I shot the rest of the show just from a distance and a little more skittish. And then, yeah, I went home, I iced my foot that night, I cut off my shoe, and I taped it up, and then went and shot a wedding the next day. I had to call an assistant at 6 a.m. to carry all the gear. I couldn't carry anything on it. And then I was like, well, I shot a wedding, it's probably just sprained. And then I went to the doctor a couple weeks later, and she's like, oh, your ligaments are torn.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But she kept shooting. I've seen the video. Right away, the camera's up again. That's a trooper.
I honestly, I just didn't know what to do.
No, I wouldn't have either. Yeah.
It was just the reaction. But Geoff, so getting back to you, I kind of want to do the geeky photo thing and ask you about like your process. Like, how many rolls of film would you bring to a show, and how many frames would they have on them and all
I was
that
shooting-
nerdy stuff?
I was shooting 35 millimeter entirely.
Yep.
And I suspect I would bring 12 or 15 rolls, and I would probably shoot 8 or 10. I shoot a lot, you know? I mean, for me, that's a lot.
That's a lot for film. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, we're talking film, just in case anybody watching has only used digital. You guys are talking actual film.
Yes,
So
film.
there's about 35 shots. I can't remember what's on a 30.
35 or 36, yeah.
Depending on if you were good at loading it, right? You
Right.
get that extra frame.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so you just shot pure black and white?
That's right. You know, back then, color photography in the world of art photography was considered vulgar. Nobody shot color. Color was for advertising, maybe for weddings, but black and white were the colors of photography. That's for sure.
And your camera, did it have autofocus?
Oh no.
That's right. Yeah.
My camera still don't have autofocus. I can't autofocus.
Always manual, even to this day.
Yeah, I can't autofocus.
That's
Are you using?
Focus is on the wrong thing for me. But I can really focus fast.
That's amazing. I think with shooting pro wrestling, you know, there's a lot people don't understand that's going through your head. You have to be conscious of your surroundings. There's a lot going on in front of you, but behind you, around you, with fans, you can't block people's view. So doing all that plus auto-focusing, changing a roll of film in the middle of a match, or like the job must have been so much more stressful then.
I certainly didn't think of it as stressful at the time. I mean, you just came to the role of, you know, I generally photographed with at least 2, probably 3 cameras over my neck.
Okay.
So I would have my primary lenses were 35 and 28 millimeter, wide and very wide. And then sometimes used a 50, a normal lens. But I would generally have the 3 cameras over my shoulder and my neck. So if one camera ran out of film, I had another one. I might have to switch lenses or probably not, but you know, that's part of the skill of being a photojournalist or doing photojournalistic like photography. You didn't let yourself run out of film when you couldn't.
Right.
And you got very fast at reloading.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Don't have a photography background, but even digital, I end up with terrible photos. So I can't imagine focusing and then the film and all that. That's incredible. Just incredible. I wanted to ask you, both of you guys actually, after looking at the book, what photos stand out to you?
Geoff, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Well, the cover photo is still a gift, you know.
That expression on his face.
Yeah,
In the center, yeah.
You know, Paul Bosch is there under the leg of one guy. I mean, it's
Hold
a
it
real
up.
gift.
Jamie, pull it back a little bit. It's a little too close.
Sure. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there
Thank
you
you for the feedback. I appreciate it.
go. But in one way, my favorite photographs are the new ones, the ones I only found 2 years ago when I started going back and scanning my negatives, and I found certain photographs that I hadn't. I'll get my copy here.
Sure.
I guess the photograph, I think I mentioned to you this, Jamie, when we talked, this photograph of Tim Woods leaving the ring, and there are all these hands coming to touch him. You know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hands, some black, some white hands, all reaching out to touch him. And one little girl, white girl, judging from her size, I would guess that she's probably 10 years old, okay? She's reaching out and she's touching Tim on the butt. Okay?
I didn't know that was her hand. I thought that was somebody else's. That's fine.
Oh no, that's her hand. And you know, I miss this photograph in the initial editing. I found it only when I was going back and scanning pictures. So that's one of my favorite. You know, I think the thing about wrestling, one of the things about wrestling, as it happened in the Coliseum in 1971, that was so amazing, was the mingling of the wrestlers with the fans. You know, they got to the ring by coming through the crowd. So everybody got a chance to touch, to say something, good or bad, you know, to hoot and holler, to damn somebody, or to urge them on. Everybody got a chance as they came. Even before they came to the ring, often if you went back by the dressing room, the wrestlers would come out and sign autographs. And so, as one fan told me one time, she said, they're like gods, but you can touch them and they will talk to you. I mean, what other sport has that kind of proximity? What other performance has that kind of proximity kind of built into it? You know, and then during the match, obviously, guys would get thrown into the crowd.
Because there were no barricades, right?
No.
Right.
People would pick them up and help them back into the ring. There's one photograph in the book of a boy where one of the wrestlers had something put into his eye that temporarily blinded him. And there's a little boy that's come up with his shirt tail helping him get whatever it is out of his eye. That really close thing between the fans and the wrestlers, that was special. And I guess that's one reason I never was particularly interested in watching it on television, because you didn't get that from TV. So those are two of my favorites.
Sorry, Andrea, do you have any favorites from the book?
I want to hear what she likes in there.
She has a more critical and more experienced eye than I have.
Well, I mean, people like what they like, and I think that's the great thing about art, right? I don't think you have to have any level of experience to enjoy looking at an image. Honestly, I am in love with the shots of the fans, and I really took notice when I was going through like how the fans would rush the ring. For me, I like images that you can hear laughter when you look at it, or when I used to shoot weddings, I used to explain to the bride, like, I want to get the shot of you smiling, but I want to get the shot of you laughing afterwards. That's the more impressive shot to me. And I really feel like a lot of these images, I can feel the emotion and I can feel being there. And that for me, that's one of the things I love about the book. And it also made me wish that the fans rushed the ring now.
Yeah.
I like the photos where I have this preoccupation with where people will take their babies to. So I liked any of the photos that had babies in them. And I'm a parent. I'm not a parent of a baby. My son's 10, but I just was like, all I could think of when I saw the photos was, oh my God, I was all worried about the baby, but they all look happy in the photos. So.
Yeah. Speaking of the kind of thing that you're talking about, this photograph
That's
of
a great one.
And with her Polaroid camera, it's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. And then for me also, like when I got into shooting pro wrestling, I was a huge fan. I met this boy, I had a crush on this boy. He liked pro wrestling, so then I liked pro wrestling. And then I forgot about him, and I just loved it. And so my father, I think, was really happy that his daughter wanted to go to pro wrestling events rather than do what other teenagers are doing, you know? So he encouraged going to autograph signings and events and stuff. But when I went to my first independent show, I went backstage and I saw what actually went on, and like how a wrestling show was produced and put on, and that it was actually a little bit more show. And I started doing that. I met a few wrestlers and they asked me to photograph the shows for them, just their matches. And the more I went, the more I saw, and I was just amazed. And it dawned on me that I was more interested in what was going on behind the curtain than what was going on in front of the curtain. And that's
really interesting. I was the opposite. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know what went on behind that.
Really?
I was just, and then so that's actually like throughout my career, I've wanted to focus, like, it's like, okay, I'll shoot the matches for you, that's fine, but I want to show what's happening back here. And so for so long that was so guarded and not allowed. And I would take a shot and wrestlers would be like, why are you taking that? You can't show that to anybody. And so I have this whole block of work that I did when I was younger that I've never done anything with. And I did not print nice contact sheets. I just have all these horribly exposed contact sheets that I wish I did a better job on, because I would like to travel back and sort of look at that stuff. But from there, that led me to really enjoying wrestling's history. So another thing, sorry, this is a long-winded way to get to.
Okay.
But so another thing for me is I love the history of, when did the matches actually become predetermined? How many people were going and watching these shows? How much did it cost? And so, like, you have pictures of Lou Thesz in here, like that. For me, I would have loved to watch Lou Thesz wrestle, Gorgeous George, or like this iconic shot of the Fabulous Moolah. It's everywhere, and it's just an image I enjoy looking at. I really enjoy how you guys used to do promotional pictures back in the day. Like, they just have such a beautiful look. And they're simple.
Which one are you talking about? You mentioned which picture? The one of...
There's the one of the Fabulous Moolah and the collage.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then even shots of the Destroyer. And I noticed it looks like, so in going, how long did you go to shoot these shows for, or events?
Well, the pictures that are in the book were made between February and late November of '71. So not very long, really. And then I came back and shot a 16mm black and white documentary film of it.
Yep.
And then I was kind of on from, I kind of had done it. I mean, I would go back from time to time just for fun, just to be there and see my old friends at ringside, but I didn't photograph much after that. I kind of wore it out. I got it,
Yeah, fair enough.
Why do you think,
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
I was just curious why you think the promoter Paul Boesch gave you the access that he did.
We talked about that a little bit last time, and I can't really answer that with any definitive answer, but I think it was probably a combination of things. I think, first of all, he was just a genuinely good guy. I mean, people around Houston adored Paul Boesch. Even if they didn't watch wrestling, he was known as a generous, community-minded, gracious gentleman. He was just really a prince of a fellow. And you never heard him talk bad about anybody. He just concentrated on the positive. He was just a great guy. So that's one. I mean, when I showed up, here I am. He doesn't know what I'm doing. For all he knows, I might be wanting to do some sort of expose. But I think he was smart enough intuitively, and what should I say, and trusting enough that he was going to give me a chance. And from the time I arrived that first night, it must have been obvious that I was there and shooting and loving it. And that would be inconsistent with someone who was there just to, the other thing is, I never asked him if I could go behind the scenes. Now, he did offer several times to let me come into the dressing room. There's a photograph in there, only one really in the book, of the spoiler getting a checkup before the match, okay? I didn't find that very interesting. I mean, it was okay. I didn't watch any matches being practiced or run through anything like that. I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't interested. And I think in terms of the final product, it's a really good thing that I wasn't interested, because I think that would take away from the book. I mean, the overall effect of the book. What you see in the book is basically more or less what you would see if you went to a wrestling match. It's nothing behind the scenes. There is that section on the history in the middle, but most of it is just, this is what you get when you go. And I didn't want to get, so I think that probably caused him to give me trust. And then, you know, as the project developed, by the summertime, I was bringing him prints, big, beautiful prints for his office. And because I genuinely liked him, and he was genuinely helping me. You know, those collages, like you just mentioned, those are taken right off the wall. Those are collages that he made.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, pardon me?
Of your work?
No.
Just all, I see.
Those, I think there should be a caption in the book.
I missed it.
If they're not, it's an oversight. Those are collages of photographs from his office. Let me see if
I see.
You know
I
what?
don't think that's mentioned in the book. I don't remember reading that.
It's not, and that's a mistake. No, each page here is a copy photograph of a big composite collage on his wall. Each piece is probably 4 by 5 feet. And he has cut out photographs and then labeled them with like a punch marker. No, those are not my photographs.
Andrew and I were wondering why you included a collage, so that's helpful, because we were wondering.
Yeah, that's an oversight on mine. You never get the book perfect.
Well,
it should have said
perfect.
or these, you know, these are publicity photographs. You didn't think these were mine, did you? I hope not.
I wasn't sure.
Well, I was wondering because you said that you were a child when you were watching Lou Thez.
Yeah.
And then, but I wasn't sure. I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So that's good to clarify. Andrew and I were
that
talking
should have been clarified in the book, and unfortunately I didn't. I wonder if I did in the first edition of the book. I bet I did, but I don't know.
This is a great shot.
That's one of my favorites. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
No, that's a good one.
Great perspective. It's just a great photo. And it's a little bit obnoxious, a little bit silly, but it's a great photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about, like, so as a photographer wandering around the venue, taking images, like, did you find lighting at that time really difficult? Like, you were just using what was available, I'm assuming. Like, did you bring your light meter with you? And
no, by that time the light meter was in my head. You know, I mean, the light was pretty predictable in the sense that the ring, first of all, the light in the ring was just gorgeous. Nobody could ever design lighting better. Now, sometime in early November, they changed the mat from white to blue, middle blue, and that destroyed the pictures. I mean, well, it diminished the pictures, because before you got the bright lights coming from above and the bounce light coming up from and I shot Tri-X film, rated it at 1,000. The ring was a 250th of a second at f4. I knew that, no question about that. That was it. If they got out of the ring, close to the edge of the ring, I had to go down to f2.8. Or maybe I had to open the shutter speed also up to 125th from 250. So that there was 1 or 2 stop difference around the edge of the ring, all right? And then if I got back into the crowd, I really couldn't shoot without going down to like a 30th of a second, so I very seldom did. In the hallways around the building, it would be like a 60th at 2.8. So I kind of knew the exposures, you know? That's the other thing. It's kind of like autofocus in the sense that not having a built-in light meter makes you learn light levels. You know, it's probably not true anymore because I've been using cameras with light meters in them now for a long time. But back then, I would look at something and know what the exposure was. The only things that might fool me would be very, very dark situations like a street at night. That would be hard for me to guess. But around the Coliseum, I could guess the exposure. And the light was good, except in the back of the crowd. Then it was very low.
That's,
There's one picture in the book.
Oh, go ahead.
That is a very different. I included this This time I did not have it in the first edition of the book. There's a picture of the balcony. And I don't remember, but I probably shot this picture at somewhere around a 15th of a second, a very low shutter speed. I'm trying to find it now. And it was very dark up there, which is why, you know, if I were doing this all again, I would probably go up in the balcony with my flash. This picture right here on this side was made up in the balcony. I mean, made from the ground floor of the balcony. And it's probably at a 50. That was very dark up there. You would have had to photograph with a flash. Nowadays, with a new digital camera, you could photograph there without a flash, but that would have been impossible at the time. What kind of camera do you shoot with?
Well, I'm currently using a Canon. I use the Mark III and the Mark IV.
Mm-hmm.
So normally in my day-to-day, I shoot commercial photography for catalog studios and flyers and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So the wrestling stuff does not pay the bills at this point in my career. I feel like it's close, but it's not there yet. So as far as buying like a more tailored sports camera, I just can't spend more money on the gear until, you know, it becomes.
Those are awfully good cameras.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with them. There's like, I kind of want to get a mirrorless just to play with it, and I'm really interested in shooting stuff in low light. But as far as what I have, I'm very happy with it. I also think too, if you're a good photographer, and that goes back to what you're saying about seeing light, like, because so a fun little game I like to play, but when I set something up is I like to guess my exposure before I start, just so I get an idea.
Yeah.
And that's just something I always did since college. And now I'm getting much closer. Seeing light was not something that came easily to me. I used to assist these photographers and they'd go, oh, wow, now that got really nice. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. They'd be like, you don't see it, do you? No.
Yeah.
And he was like really good. He would pull me aside and actually show me the difference in point, but I didn't see it. Like, I did not see it. And it took years, probably like 8 years, like the first 3 years of shooting and the 5 years I assisted before I was like, oh, I get it. Because once you see light, you know, it doesn't matter what you have. If you gave me an iPhone and said you could only shoot this event with an iPhone, I'm sure I could come up with something interesting because I have good compositional skills. I have an idea about lighting. You know, lighting and composition is what you need to learn and really focus your attention on, I think. And then from there, you can take those skills and apply them to any piece of equipment somebody gives you.
You want to come to my class and tell my students that?
Anytime.
I don't think they listen to me.
I don't know if I would have listened either. There's all kinds of things I didn't listen to when I was younger that now I'm like, oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you both mentioned that you've done other photography than just wrestling. So I'm wondering what makes photographing wrestling unique from photographing something else? Oh, and
like photographing what it's like comparing apples and oranges, photographing, are we talking other live events, or are we talking about advertising?
Well, even other sports, I'm wondering, or other events where there's movement, I'm wondering. Like, I know Geoff has also done some photography on rodeos, he mentioned to me before. So I'm just wondering what makes it unique for pro wrestling photography.
I don't know. I got to think about that a minute, but I will tell you, first of all, right after the book came out, a year after the book came out, 1973 early, the Houston Ballet hired a new artistic director, and he wanted a new photographer. And he saw my book on wrestling and hired me. I'd never been to a ballet. And I ended up being the company photographer for almost 30 years.
Oh my goodness.
And I would say that photographing dance, photographing ballet, is not essentially different. I mean, the difference with wrestling in the Coliseum was the crowd. You had that wonderful interaction with the crowd. Whereas in ballet, it's all up on the stage. Nobody gets thrown into the audience in a ballet.
not on the.
None I've been to anyway. But you know, the real difference is not with other sports, because I've done a fair amount of sports photography. I've done ballet photography, but what's really different is photography, say, of landscape or architecture, where you don't have the challenge of action happening, you know, often very dramatically in front of you, and something happening in an instant that's gone. You know, if you're photographing a beautiful landscape, yes, the light changes and the light can come and go. And someone can walk through it, or a tree can move in the wind, but the action there is very minimal. It's more about light and composition. The wrestling for me was so much about basically catching the motion, freezing the motion, if you will, into a beautiful composition or interesting composition. But that's not so different for me than photographing dance or high school football. What do you think, Andrea?
Well, I, like you, my wrestling portfolio got me a bunch of other work. Everyone I talk to really is interested in that portion of my work. That's how I got my first job shooting MMA. A friend of mine said, you know, well, if you can shoot pro wrestling, you shoot MMA. And I was like, I don't want to shoot MMA. I just want to shoot wrestling. I think you're missing it. And anyway, I went and I showed up and they're like, okay, so you're going to shoot the tail of the tapes. And I didn't know what that was. I had to Google it. And I was like, sure. I was told I was doing headshots. And the guy looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, okay. So the MMA I had to learn on the fly pretty quickly. But every time I went, they'd give me more and more to do. But the one thing I really loved about MMA versus pro wrestling was I wasn't in the crowd. Like, I was up on a ladder shooting down into an octagon. I did not have to worry about my surroundings. I did not have to, you know, I mean, it's a long night standing up on a ladder leaning over a cage, you know, that you don't have much of an opportunity to get down. But it was, I feel like the way I shoot pro wrestling, you know, can be, if I've been away from it for a while, I'm a little skittish around ringside. Like, I have to work it up a little bit. And, you know, I also think I want to get shots, as I said before, that evoke some sort of emotion or tell some sort of story. So I don't want to do shots where I'm just showing a move. I think that's kind of boring. And for me personally, if there's no face in the shot, like if I can't see the emotion on somebody's face, I automatically delete it. It's just, it's out. I want to tell the story, like, okay, what does the venue look like? So maybe shoot a shot of somebody flipping really wide so you can see the lighting and or, you know, just have some negative space. Just, I like to play with it. I don't want to just say that it's a shot of somebody doing this move. But I think that also depends on, you know, what your job is for the day. Is your job just to tell the story of the match? Is your job to photograph a shot that they can use for promotional purposes or advertising? I think that's the number one question I ask when shooting is, what is this image for? And then from there, you can figure out how you're going to compose it and how you want things to look. That didn't answer that question at all, by the way. I got off on a tangent.
It's okay.
But,
it's all very interesting. Don't worry.
I would say that pro wrestling is different than shooting other things. For example, advertising.
Yeah.
It all has to be perfect. And there's, God, you know, I can have a crew of 10 or 20 doing one shot one day. And we will sit there and we will tweak things all day long. And when I'm shooting pro wrestling, I'm by myself. I have to make decisions on the fly. I don't have time to go back and change it. I could change it the next time I shoot the show, but I can't, you know, I can never be in that moment again. And so you have to make really quick decisions. And I would say that's the major difference.
I'm wondering how the wrestlers, sorry, can't talk right now. I wonder how the wrestlers reacted to both of you being photographers. Like, how are they very accepting of you guys being there? Any memorable encounters with wrestlers when you were taking photos? Just curious about that.
Well, you know, Paul Bosch's embracing of me as a photographer, I think had the direct effect that the wrestlers embraced me too. You know, as I remember when the book came out, I had a book signing at a gallery, and Paul knew that, and he said it was going to be on a Friday afternoon, and he said, "Could I send some of the wrestlers by to sign?" I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And 6 or 8 wrestlers came, including Ernie Ladd.
Oh my goodness.
Big, giant. You know,
giant, yeah.
Yeah, and he was there for half an hour. And as he left, I had never talked to him before, but as he left, I thanked him for coming. I said, I really appreciate it. And he looked down at me and said, that's okay. Whatever Paul Bosch asked me to do, I do it. So, in other words, I didn't do it for you, man. I did it for Paul.
Yeah.
But I think that his acceptance of me directly led to the wrestlers' acceptance of me. And, you know, there were several of the wrestlers I got to know a little bit by talking to them from time to time. Johnny Valentine. Mm-hmm. When my picture of him ended up in Newsweek magazine in an article on contemporary photography, you know, he got all excited. But he came into the ring the next match after that. I was in the ring, and he came in and he looked at me and waved at me and he said, hey, we made Newsweek, didn't we? So, you know, I had very good relations with the wrestlers. There were none that were ever an issue or a problem for me. I think they appreciated the attention of someone with a different perspective. You know, the very fact that I was taking it so seriously as a subject, which I was and still am, you know, that they felt that and they respected it.
How about you, Andrea?
I feel like I get the same sort of respect. When I was younger, the 2 wrestlers that brought me around would walk me into the locker rooms and they would point out some females and they would say, do you want to be like them or do you want to be respected? And if you want to be respected, do your job and don't sleep with the boys. And so that was hammered in like from the second I ever went backstage. And I've always wanted to have a career focused on photographing pro wrestling. That has always been like a lifelong dream of mine. And, but I realized that I didn't know how to do it and I needed to have the skills. So I did that. I went to college. I assisted advertising guys. I assisted catalog guys. I assisted wedding guys. Then I shot weddings for 20 years. And then, you know, all along while shooting pro wrestling and just trying to get better. So I think a lot of people understand that was my journey and understand that this isn't just like so I can get free tickets. Like I'm actually here to contribute and I want them to look the best they possibly can. Like one of the things I do when I'm shooting promotional pictures, sorry, is I let them choose the selects. Like I make sure they're happy. And if they say they don't like something, I ask them why. And then I either say, well, we got to take them again. Or the next time I shoot them, I know, okay, well, they really hated this last time. What can I bring differently this time? So I think if you show up and you're respectful of what they do, they will be respectful and grateful for what you do.
Right.
Because it is a collaborative,
Right.
You know, even in the matches, you know, guys can stand and hold something for me or not, you know. Well, they can find me ringside and make sure I get the shot of them holding the title, or they don't have to. You know, it's better for both of us if they do that, but they don't, you know, it's definitely, it's a good working relationship if you respect one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also,
so how old were you when you first started photographing wrestling?
17, 18. And then it's actually the reason I became a photographer. Like, somebody asked me if I could take pictures at a show, just they handed me their camera. And then as a fluke, that next year had a photography class in high school. And so my grandfather gave me his Pentax and I joined photography class, and then that was it. Instead of taking spares in high school, I then decided to do photography assignments for my old photography instructor, even though I wasn't being graded on them. I just wanted to spend more time in the dark room and more time developing film. And then I went to school on a full scholarship for 3 years, graduated top of my class. And
what was that? Where'd you go to school?
Humber College.
That's in Toronto?
In Toronto?
Yep. It was just, you know, I just fell in love with it. It just helps me see the world. It's just how I see the world. I remember one instructor telling me that at some point in your life, you're going to be sitting looking at a sunset, and for God's sakes, don't pick up the camera. Just let that be you. Like, let your mind remember that, because there will be times in your life that you should not pick up the camera. You should just enjoy the moment you're in. And I think that's pretty good advice.
I think so too. Do you guys have favorite wrestlers that you've photographed, and why?
Well, you know, my favorites are going to be long in the past.
That's
like
okay.
1971. Yeah. Two favorites of mine. I loved Mil Mascaras, the man of 1,000 masks. First of all, he was just physically beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
He was chiseled. He was a gorgeous man, you know, and he would do that flying body press. He called it off the post, and it was really something to watch. But he was just statuesque and elegant and beautiful in the ring. But I have to say that overall, I think my favorite was Wahoo Mcdaniel. That guy wrestled with such fierce energy, with such intensity, that it was hard to believe that he wasn't fighting for his life. And I just could not believe how hard he went for how long. And he was a great performer. I mean, when he lost, you cried because it was a tragedy, you know, and when he won, you were joyous with him because by God, he earned it. He was a great performer.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be my two.
Jeff,
yeah.
While you're on the subject of Wahoo, can you tell everyone the story that's from your book, the one Wahoo wrote about Tim Wood's finger? Like, were you ringside for that?
I can't remember where it happened. It seemed like to me it was somewhere in Minnesota, but Wahoo and I were talking, and we were talking about how dangerous wrestling could be. I think it's how we got into it. But he was telling me that Tim Woods was wrestling somewhere. Seems to me it was in Minnesota, can't remember. But anyway, the point is that the promoter had put together this contest that anybody that would get in the ring with Tim Woods and last, I believe it was like 5 minutes without being pinned or submitting, you know, would win $1,000. And as Wahoo told the story, some very big, very strong guy in motorcycle jacket kind of gear pulled off his leather jacket, jumped in the ring to challenge Tim. And they wrestled for 3 or 4 minutes. And at one point it looked like Tim was about to pin him, and the guy bit his finger off in the ring.
That's crazy. That's one of Andrea's favorite stories. She was very excited to ask about that.
Yeah.
What are you both looking for? I know Geoff, it's been a while since you've done the pro wrestling photography, but what are you looking for in a great pro wrestling photo?
The fundamental thing that I'm looking for is the same fundamental thing I'm looking for in any photograph: surprise. You know, I'd be surprised and delighted. I want the reaction should be, oh my God, I didn't know it could look like that.
Yeah.
The visual surprise, because first of all, I'm a photographer, and second of all, I'm a wrestling fan. So the first thing I want is a photograph that shocks me and surprises me, and I go, oh my God, I didn't know it could look like that. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing I'm looking for.
Andrea, how about you?
I think we sort of touched on it a little bit. I really like Geoff's answer, though. I was thinking maybe I should change mine. No.
Modify it, yes.
Okay, so this is a pet peeve of mine, and maybe because I shoot products inside of rooms all day, I like ring ropes to be straight. They have to be straight or like completely crooked. They can't be. That's something that drives me insane. Like, I will fix the ropes if I have time.
That is very funny.
And I think that comes
from ring ropes. Huh?
Yeah, I know, but it's like, it's serious. Sometimes when I go through wrestling magazines, I'm like, is that my shot? I'm like, no, the ropes aren't straight.
That's very nerdy, but I appreciate it.
I want to be able to hear the photograph. That's something I look for in all of my people photography. I want to hear it. I want to feel it. I want a word to come to mind. I want you to have some sort of emotional attachment to it.
Yeah. What advice do you guys have for aspiring photographers, or even people who are photographers now, and just advice for them to get better or improve?
When shooting wrestling, or just in general?
It could be in general, just advice for photographers or people like me who don't have any photographing talent whatsoever.
I think you should, right off the bat, you should ask yourself, what's the image for before you take it? You should understand, like, why you're taking that picture. Is it just to take a picture? You know, if me and my sister are out having dinner and I want a picture of the two of us, why am I taking it? Am I taking a nice selfie of us because we're sending it to a cute boy or putting it on Instagram? We want people to comment and make us look pretty, or are we trying to show that we're out just having fun? Like, subconsciously, these things go through people's minds when they're selecting. I'm just not sure that they actually know. So I think once you answer that question, all other thoughts towards that image can come into play. You know, well, if I want a beauty shot, then I want to move closer to the light and light up all the wrinkles. And, you know, if I'm just showing an emotion, who cares if it has imperfections? You know, you can just, even with that little bit of amateur photography, you can apply that question to your work and it'll change it with the answer.
Okay. And Geoff?
I have two answers.
Great.
I have the answer that I give my students, and then I have the best answer I ever heard to that question.
Sounds
okay?
great.
The answer I give my students is start. In other words, you can think about it all day. You can think about what kind of camera you want. You can think about where you're going to go. But the main thing is to start. In other words, once you get going, if you love what you're doing, I mean, if you have any desire at all to, once you start, it will happen. You don't know where it'll happen, and you have to make decisions along the way. But the first thing that so many people don't do is they don't start. They sit and they think about
everything.
It. Huh?
Yeah. That's with everything in life.
It is. Okay. And then the other answer, many years ago, in one of the photography magazines, they asked that question to a dozen great living photographers. You know, what is your advice if someone wants to be a photographer? And all the answers were pretty predictable until they got to Jacques Lartigue, the great French photographer. And his advice was, fall in love. and, and at first it sounds glib and crazy, and but I will say it's very interesting that when I started photographing in 1971, February 1971, I had just fallen in love with Judy Gordon, who became my wife 2 years later. And it might just be that the passion and the love I had for wrestling was a byproduct of everything else that was stirring in me at the time, Yeah. So in a way, sometimes maybe even suffering with something will do as well as being in love. But I mean, I think you have to, you're always a byproduct of the fundamental emotions that are going on with you at the time. If you're in love with life, for whatever reason, you're going to go and you're going to find marvelous things to photograph. So falling in love is not bad advice, I still say.
No, that's.
But you still got to start.
Well, yes. That was kind of the questions I had. I don't know, Andrea, was there anything else you wanted to ask or anything I missed?
I don't think so. I sort of looked over our sheet here. Oh, Geoff, one thing I'd love to know is, are you still making prints?
Oh yeah. No, not darkroom prints.
Okay.
I make, but I have lots of darkroom prints, but that I made because I made a lot of prints at the time. But I don't do any darkroom printing anymore. I mean, I would if something came along, but basically, I'm trying to get as good as I can possibly get at scanning and making inkjet prints. Because that's a very challenging technology, and one that that I can constantly get better at. That's where I'm concentrating. But I do make prints, yeah. I was starting to say a minute ago, I wish the two of you could have seen the show that I hung when the book came out. It was just before the end of the world, when the pandemic hit. But I did a show of the work from the book. It was the 50th anniversary of our department at Rice, and the 50th anniversary almost of the book. And I scanned the negatives, and the biggest prints in the show were 60 by 90 inches. That's a very big print.
Yeah.
And they were, of course, inkjet prints, but they were so beautiful. And I recreated the book on the walls of the gallery.
All the pictures?
Not all of them, but a lot.
Okay.
Wow.
And it was a big show. And it opened, it had good attendance for a week, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and everything closed.
Well, I just want to thank you both. I found this absolutely fascinating, and I've had so much fun collaborating with Andrea on this, our first time working together. So that's been awesome. And happy birthday again tomorrow. And
Thank
Geoff,
you.
I just love the book. Thank you for sending us each a copy. And I encourage, I'm glad you've re-released it. I know there were a lot of people looking for it before you decided to do that. So now is your chance to go and get it. And all the best to both of you. And I just want to thank everybody at slamwrestling.net for watching. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.